He's just a master of making you feel like there's air in the painting.
Welcome to The Love of Art, the Perrotin podcast. Here, artists speak about other artists that fascinate them. Musicians, writers, filmmakers, actors, designers, in a very personal way. We believe that art belongs to everyone. As French sociologist Pierre Bourdieu wrote in L'amour de l'art, culture is not a privilege bestowed by nature. If everyone had the means to obtain it, it would belong to everyone. In his highly detailed paintings, Ali Banisadr coaxes characters and hybrid figures out of atmospheres of color and brushwork. Each of his paintings is a world unto itself that weaves together history, mythology, autobiographical narratives, sonic memories, and global events, while offering the artist's own reflections on the human condition. In this episode, he talks about Japanese master from the 19th century, Hiroshige. Enjoy!
I grew up in Iran. I was born in 1976 in Tehran. And when I was 3, there was the revolution there. And when I was 4, I lived through 8 years of war in Iran. I think as I was a kid, one of the most memorable sort of art form per se for me is reading Tintin and Milou. I think I would just read these books over and over. I remember thinking about the fact that in Tintin they would travel to other parts of the world and they would learn about other cultures, and there was a lot of mythology and history and things like that that really impressed me. Perhaps that was my first contact as a kid with any kind of art form. But also in the building where I lived, one of my friends that lived there, his older sister had taught art classes. So we would always go and, draw and paint, especially when there was upheaval happening around me, sounds of war and explosions and vibrations and such. I think it was the best time to just kind of build another world as a kid to try to understand what's happening around you in some ways. We didn't go to museums in Iran, but I do remember vividly when we took a European trip with my parents. I think I was maybe 8 or 9. We went to maybe 5 different countries, but something that I remember that happened was when I saw the Sistine Chapel. I think something sort of happened to me when I saw that painting. I sort of went into another place, My mom was trying to get me to leave and I couldn't hear her. I was just transformed to another world. And I think it was the first time that I sort of had an understanding of what art could do, how art could sort of get inside of your body and get inside of your head and kind of transform you as a portal to another place. I don't know, it almost felt like I could remember being there or something. I don't know, something strange like that I remember. And I think it was the first time that I had an understanding of the power of art or what art could do. So that stayed with me till this day, actually. I think visual art wasn't so present as much as poetry was. My grandmother was a poet and she would read me all these Sufi poetry, but then poetry is just such a huge part of the culture but it's also very visual in some way. So I feel the words of poetry would create visuals in my mind, and the rhythm of them and the sounds of them would create visual places in my mind. So when I moved to US when I was 12, after some time I became really interested in graffiti art. And living in California, when I moved to San Francisco, I think it was a kind of a golden age of graffiti art there. So I think through graffiti art I started to kind of understand contemporary art as well, because artists that we kind of hung out together, we also made work in our studios, and the work we made, of course we were discussing contemporary art as well. I discovered the work of Hiroshige when I was in undergrad at School of Visual Arts. But I always liked the idea of, when you discover an artist, but then you see the traces of the artist in other art. So it automatically kind of took me back to Tantan again, because I thought, oh, Hergé for sure must have looked at Hiroshige. I mean, you look at the colors and the compositions and everything. And then, of course, I thought about Van Gogh too, that, of course, we know that Van Gogh was looking at a lot of Japanese prints. I kind of saw traces of Hiroshige and Japanese prints and Miyazaki as well. But yes, it was during school that I discovered Hiroshige, and I was very taken by so many aspects of his work. First it was like the way he kind of frames works and the way his compositions are just incredible. But then, of course, all the formal elements of the way he arranges the colors. And also, I always think the best artists give you a new pair of glasses to see the world through. And I feel like through looking at Hiroshige, I'm able to appreciate things I see in everyday life, like looking at the sky and the trees and the way the birds form and the light and so on. So I think it sort of enhances your vision of everyday things that you look at. I think the 100 Famous Views of Edo, I think those are the series I respond to the most. In my bedroom, the only artwork that I have, it's a Hiroshige, so I go to sleep looking at it and I wake up looking at it. So it's that series for sure. It definitely brings me calmed and it brings me joy. I have a lot of other works that are very different than Hiroshige, but I think with Hiroshige is definitely, and it's interesting too, because even out my window from my bedroom, there's exactly Hiroshige world out there. There's a home that has a particular kind of roofing, and then there's the trees, and then there's the sky, and then I see the bird. So it's almost like, and this Hiroshige that I own, I had bought it before moving to the current place that I'm in. So it's almost like it was made for my bedroom. Because that's I see the Hiroshige and then I see the view out my window and they sort of match. Well, just recently we went to the Brooklyn Museum where they had this amazing show of just that. They had the 100 Views of Edo with my kids, and we went and looked each one. There's 100 of them, but you stand in front of each and you really gotta look for some time, because it takes time to really get the mood and the feeling and start to understand it. So I mean, I love them all, but I definitely had some favorites, and then my kids had some favorites. But the one that we looked at for the longest time, and I don't remember the title right now, but is one that I have this painting that's in the Perrotin Shanghai show. It's called The Land of Miracles, and the top right-hand side of the painting was sort of empty, and I didn't know what to do with it. This kind of thing happens a lot, where sometimes you gotta wait until you go and experience something and bring it back to the painting. So I went to see the Hiroshige show at Brooklyn Museum, and this one particular print that I was looking at for a very long time, when I came back to the studio, the sky was filled with the same exact mood of that painting. So maybe that painting would be quite important for me and my kids. Yeah, I gotta admit, I don't know so much about his biography. I feel like I know the work and decisions and the choices and the artwork than knowing much about his biography. I would like to know, but I feel like every time I look his book, it's like my eyes shift from the words to the images, and then I just end up becoming immersed with the images in some ways. So, yeah. I think Hiroshige in my work, it's like another lens amongst others to kind of see my work through, but I always think about Hiroshige when I'm thinking about composition and color and the sky, but also I really like his nocturnal, these paintings that are very nocturnal, so like the way he arranges the stars and mood of the work. So I think it's more of a mood than anything else that I feel like only Hiroshige, it's like a Hiroshige mood that I could tap into in regards to my own work. But he's also, I mean, master of color for sure. One thing that I'm fascinated in Hiroshige's work is the element, how he uses wind in his paintings. I feel like I find the way he creates the wind so beautiful. And I think wind is something that I think about a lot in my own work, because there's always like some kind of a invisible element there's a lot of movement in my work. So there's this element of something moving the elements in the paintings around, you know? But if I could go back during that time, it would be so interesting to see the actual locations, what it looked like, and then what he made out of them, you know? I suppose it's kind of like when I made a visit to south of France and went to Cézanne's studio, and as I was walking around, I saw, okay, you could see Cézanne everywhere. I wonder if it would be like that when, you know, go back to the Edo time and you walking around the city. Would it be like a Hiroshige, or did he take something that was, you know, maybe more mundane and made it into this beautiful memory for us to remember that time? And I think that's the great thing too, to be able to like leave a visual memory of something for us to vividly remember in that way.
We hope you enjoyed this discussion with Ali Banisadr on Hiroshige. Please subscribe to our podcast channel and follow us on social media at Perrotin so you won't miss any episodes or news. See you soon with more artists on the love of art.